It's funny how things go in circles. Comedy is sort of big again now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Not that that's much help to you unless you're one of about 12 guys. But
yeah, well, yeah, there are. I mean, I think it's a bit like everything. There's always those at the top, and then there's always those that are underneath, isn't there?
It's getting a bit more, funnily enough. I mean, that whole comedy's the new rock and roll thing. They first started to trot that out in like the early 90s when, like Rob and Dave played Wembley Arena, and suddenly we were all pretending to be rock stars. But in one respect, it has gotten a bit more like rock and roll in that it's difficult to just get by. You either get insanely wealthy or you need a day job. You see what I mean? It used to be much easier to actually just make a comfortable living as a comedian in this country. Whereas now, you're kind of either beer money in it or you're John Bishop. You know, there's
Yeah.
There's little, there's not as much in the way of middle ground. I'm still doing okay doing this kind of thing. There's still touring. I mean, I tour at a fairly modest kind of level. The Stables is one of the bigger things I'll be playing on this run, So it's but even then, it's, but I've been around so long that I've got, I guess I've got enough of a personal following that I can do stuff under my own, on my own brand, to use the appalling term, as it were, rather than just play, comedy clubs all the time. I've got enough of a kind of a profile, I guess, which I suppose I owe largely to the Now Show. That I can kind of tour on the back of that under my own name.
So people that don't know you from the Now Show love comedy and would love to come and see you. What would you say is your comedy style?
Well, my comedy style takes many different forms, but if they were going to come and see Don't Believe a Word, this is kind of a piece of the kind of things I do at Edinburgh and then on tour now, which is my one-man shows are kind of... my approach to them is very much, I think, in terms of not so much, I need to write an hour and a half of jokes. I think, what do I know enough about and care enough about that I can talk about it in a fairly engaging manner for as long as it takes? And then we'll worry about funnying it up in due course, So this show is about my skepticism show, because I actually, I feel quite strongly about it, that there is an awful lot of unnecessary suffering in the world caused basically just by people believing bad things. And I think this genuinely does compromise, the happiness and security of the human race, that we basically have a world in which people believe stuff which, if they thought about it, they probably would realise they probably shouldn't believe. And, I'm sure people will draw inferences from that. I don't want to it's a bit early in the morning to go into sort of the heavier end of the philosophical implications of this. But, but from that position where this is something that means something to me, and something I care quite a lot about, I can then be sort of quite animated and engaging about it, and then, I present the whole thing as a comedy show. So it's got, a lot of jokes, a lot of songs, at least one kind of dance routine, like I say, and it's been very well received. I mean, to this point where I didn't think I was still going to be doing this show this year. I thought basically I was going to do it Edinburgh in 2014. I thought I'll talk for all of 2015, and then in 2016 I'll talk something new. But in actual fact, over the course of the last year, this show built up quite a bit of a buzz around itself, and it went up quite a lot of interest in stuff where the venues are like, no, we want that one. We want to bring that one back. We haven't had that one yet. We haven't had the skepticism yet. So I'm touring this show for longer than I've ever toured anything.
Yes.
Well, there used to be a lot of interest in it.
That's a good thing. Right. I mean, you mentioned you had a following. You started off a Twitter thing a little while ago to get people. I think it was on the Now Show, wasn't it?
That was in the very, very early days of Twitter.
And you got yourself...
Very early days of Twitter, when it only just started. And in fact, when Twitter was kind of a new thing, that people were getting the hang of, because I remember there was much ado around that time that somebody finally broke 1 million followers, and I think it was Ashton Kutcher was the first person to break 1 million followers.
Yeah.
And now you've got, the Ariana Grandes of the world who've got something like, 60 million, So that was when Twitter still quite a new thing. Now, what I just noticed was that when you joined Twitter, it's in the early days, it provided a slightly uncomfortably concrete barometer of how famous you were.
Yeah.
Where, you might be feeling quite pleased with yourself when you have how many thousand followers, and then, you looked at Stephen Fry, where he had like 1 million or something, and you think, But I just thought it would be quite fun just to see if you could do it, given that we have like about 1.5 million people who listen to the Now Show every week.
Yeah.
To see if we could stitch it up. Just saying, just log, register, log in, join, click on follow me, and then you never follow me again. I don't care. Let's just see. Of course, it didn't work. I think it may be about an extra 200 followers or something. Because one of the things I've discovered is that the Radio 4 listeners are incredibly loyal, but they're very difficult to motivate to do anything.
I think we're all. Should we say? I think we're all.
What really requires of them is they don't switch off between the news and the archers.
Yeah.
And that's generally something they can be persuaded to do. But actually doing something is, they're not the most easily motivated audience.
I think we're all creatures of habit, and a bit of apathy rules, doesn't it? But never mind. So, what would you say the best thing and the worst thing about being a comedian is?
Having to tell people you're a comedian is not fun.
Yeah.
Because it sounds weird when you tell people I'm a comedian. It sounds weird. And also, one of the immediate responses you go, tell us a joke then.
Yeah.
Which I feel like saying, well, what do you do for a living? You're a plumber. Well, I'm clogging toilet then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not constantly on the clock.
No.
There are some, in fairness, there are some comedians who are. And that's possibly why I don't hang out with comedians that much. Because you do get comedians who are permanently on the clock, and that's just it's impossible to have a relaxing conversation with them. Because they just always got to go for the gag. Every possible gag that comes up, they go, pick it to the gag. I'm like, hey, can we just chill out and have a chat, please?
Yeah.
So I can see why people do get that impression of comedians, because there are some comedians who are. But the other one is that what Andrew's almost kind of alluded to right now. If you have to tell people you're a comedian, that means they've never heard of you. And if they've never heard of you, they kind of somewhere in the back of their mind decide that you must be rubbish. So you instantly get this sort of weird, slight, uneasy, almost pitying twinge when you tell people you're a comedian. They go, oh dear. You know what I mean? He's obviously terrible then, because he's had to tell me he's a comedian. Whereas if he was any good, he'd be on the telly, and I wouldn't have to ask what he does for a living. You see what I mean? So, having to tell people you're a comedian is not much fun. Other than that, weirdly, I was talking about this the other day, I think I probably have more fun on a day-to-day basis than most people I know. I probably enjoy more of what I do than almost anybody I know. Although the funny thing is, all the bits that I don't enjoy are the bits I don't get paid for. The bits I get paid for, like writing and performing, I like that. That's fun. The bit I don't get paid for is driving about 700 miles a week.
Yeah.
Or, doing my tax returns. Or, the bits that I don't, the only bits I don't like, weirdly, the only bits that nobody pays me for.
I think that goes.
I've often said if I was getting paid by the mile, they could have the comedy for free.
I think that's a lot of performers and a lot of people. They hate. I don't mind the driving; it's the sitting in the traffic that really annoys me. But let's not get into that one. You also away from the comedy, and also you do it with the comedy as well. You're into music and performing musical songs or comedy songs, whatever you like to call them.
That's kind of my niche, I suppose. That's kind of my USP. I'm quite unusual, and you do get a lot of comics who will start off, coming on with a guitar and singing songs. A lot of them will bin it after the first few years and decide, this is the crutch, this is getting I'm a custom decide. With me, that never really occurred to me. I thought, no, I think I'm actually quite good at this, and I'm going to, make this kind of this central piece of what I do. And that is what got me the Now Show, which is what got me whatever kind of following I have. And here's a thing. You sometimes don't get a lot of respect from other comedians as a musical comic, because there is the perception is that it's easy for musical comedians. And they've got a point, because it is possible, I will acknowledge, to get by as a really mediocre musical comic in a way is not possible to get by as a really mediocre stand-up. If you get up with a guitar when they're just drunk enough for a sing song and get a bunch of rude words to write with the tune of Wild Thing, you sort of, what that means, however, sometimes is if you're trying to do something maybe a bit more considered with musical comedy, like I like to think I am, you're trying to do something something a bit clever, a bit more considered, something a bit more thoughtful, you don't necessarily get credit for that because you're a musical comic, so it's easy for you. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as all these things, it swings and roundabouts, And I've got my nice little corner of the market, which is cool, and in many respects, I'm kind of the go-to guy for certain things. You want funny songs written about something, particularly in a hurry. I appear to be the guy that people turn to, which is nice. But what it does mean is that there's only kind of certain projects that's never going to have a use for that. So in some respects, I think, it may actually have held me back. I can't get on the panel shows. For love nor money. Not that particularly worries me on an artistic level, but it is kind of a way to progress, and it's one of the ways comedians do progress these days, But, and the thing is, I entirely understand why not, because if you're putting a show together where basically a bunch of guys are just going to sit behind the desk and exchange quips, then why would you hire the song guy? You think, well, then he's the song guy. We have no need of the song guy. No. And the fact that I still, obviously this show is, about an hour and 45 minutes long, and the song's in it, but it's not all singing. There's a fair bit of leather in it as well. But still, I am known as the song guy, which is great. But it can have drawbacks.
Yeah, I mean, you can turn around to him and say, well, can you sing? Can you play instruments? And most comics can't. I can't. So you just got that one. I mean, and also, when I see comics on panel shows, I always think most of the time it seems so rehearsed.
Couldn't possibly comment.
No, I know you can't. I'm just sort of, I'm putting that out there now. What
our theories, I do know some people who are employed on those shows as program associates.
Yeah. Indeed. So, but they do seem very rehearsed. But we won't. I'm not going to draw. I was passing a comment, not asking your opinion on that one. Who would you class as your comedy heroes? Who did you when you were a young man or a few years ago? Who did you look up to and thought he's great?
Well, my principal kind of inspiration is somebody that your audience will not have heard of, or they won't. There's a guy called Tom Lehrer.
Yeah.
Tom Lehrer was an American. He's still alive. He's about 90, but he's still alive. And I say was because this is something he only did very, very briefly. He was a Harvard math lecturer, actually, but a brilliant comic songwriter and very good pianist. And he became sort of weirdly kind of hip in the very late 50s and early 60s amongst kind of beatnik comedy fans for writing these really quite dark and acerbic comedy songs with musicians and piano. And I discovered him quite by chance in the 80s. So a good 30 years later or something. My parents had been fans of his in the late 50s. And what really impressed me about Lehrer's stuff was the fact that lyrically they were ingenious. He had a great penchant for what you might call stunt rhyming, which is something I like doing, where you have to kind of, bend the words a bit to get them to rhyme, have the rhymes land in the middle of words. He was great for that kind of thing. But also, musically, his songs are great. The music side was set up. And something I think which I find annoying about a lot of comedy songs, and I think a lot of people find annoying about comedy songs, is that they often tend to be a bit perfunctory in terms of how the music goes. The lyrics are very clever, but the tune is incredibly basic. And one of the things I loved about Tom Lehrer was the fact that his music was very, very good as well. And more recently, and I finally had a chance to tell him this face-to-face, this guy called Philip Pope. He used to write most of the songs for Spitting Image and Radio.
I remember him.
Yeah. Well, I was in the touring production of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with him a couple of years ago, so I was finally able to tell him this face that I was very inspired, particularly with the kind of the artist parody things that I will do for the Now Show. Like Stone parodies or Smith parodies. I was very much inspired by the stuff he used to do for Radioactive in particular, for that kind of thing, because what he would do is, rather than take, well, back in those days, it would have been like a Duran Duran song or a Keith song or a Simon and Garfunkel song. Rather than just take a song and write funny words to it, he would kind of strip the music down to its component parts and reconstruct it. So what you ended up with was a Simon and Garfunkel song that you'd never heard before, or a Duran Duran song that you'd never heard before. Just because he stripped it down to its component elements and reconstructed a whole new song in their style, and that's very much the approach I take. So I was actually able to tell him that to his face when we were on the road with Hitchhiker, I do owe you, because I very much based my approach on the way you used to do it Radioactive. So I guess, in terms of musical comedy stuff, in terms of stand-up, the music kind of bleeds into it again, because I've always thought that I'm more like rather